We had a tenant who was actually paying their rent for the most part. So it made it very hard to evict on payments. The reason we wanted them out is because they were breaking into vacant units and giving the keys to people and renting it out. They were selling drugs and trafficking drugs out of there. They were having pit bulls. Tenants couldn't go in and do anything. Welcome to the Housing Provider Show, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for tuning in. Let's start off with the story of the day for us. The sheriffs come out to do an eviction of a tenant that we've been trying to get out for a while. Here's the crazy thing about Chicago that most people don't understand, and why, again, it's so important that you are screening your tenants and doing everything you legally can to make sure you have good tenants in there. We had a tenant who was actually paying their rent. They'd be late, but then they would catch up, or they'd go behind and catch. So it made it very hard to evict on payment. The reason we wanted them out is because they were breaking into vacant units and giving the keys to people and renting it out. They were selling drugs and trafficking drugs out of there. They were having pit bulls that were in the yard, making it where tenants couldn't go in. And this building is practically right now vacant. We got out of 10 units, we have 3 units that are occupied because we had no way of getting workers in and out, no way of safely doing it for a while. So we had to wait for the courts, and unfortunately, this is something that people don't realize. Sometimes people think that it's just, hey, if it's non-payment, it's going to take 8 to 10 months to do an eviction. I'm telling you right now, it's almost harder to get an eviction for criminal activity. It wasn't easier because they were terrorizing the neighbor or a threat to other neighbors. The courts actually make it harder because it's harder to prove that. It's really easy to prove someone doesn't pay rent. You show them the rent roll. You show them, hey, I don't have a check. They have to show the check. It's really hard to prove that, they're selling drugs out of the unit. Even though you can see it, you can call the cops. They come. They already put the drugs up in the broom. Cops can't go in. They can't do anything. And you're sort of stuck with it. And the shittiest part is the city of Chicago, despite not letting you screen for certain criminal activity and not letting you say, I don't want that person in my unit because they have a past of a criminal activity, the city will still come and fine you and put your building into building court because drugs are being trafficked out of it, because things are happening in that building. And to me, that's crazy.
That makes absolutely no sense.
No. What are you supposed to do? Because you're following the law. Someone has a criminal record. They sat in jail for 2 years. Now that crime happened 3 years ago, and it wasn't a crime against a property, you can't use that when you screen them to say, no, I don't want you in my property.
What is the limitation on that? Is it 3 years? Is it 1 year? Is it never?
It depends on the crime. It depends on the situation. So the one exclusion to this is sexual crime. So if you have someone that applies and they are on the list where they have to register as a sex offender, because if you have a multifamily property, there's a good chance that there's kids living upstairs, downstairs, etc. You are always allowed to decline based on that.
Which makes perfect sense.
Now, if the crime happened, if the crime is over 3 years old and it was not a crime that would put their neighbors, meaning the tenants, other tenants in the building, or if you have a house and you can't use the neighbor situation at all, if it's not a crime that affects that, or it is not a crime where they did building damage, right? If they tore apart their other apartment, you can use that as criteria. But if they robbed the 7-Eleven or got caught selling drugs, you cannot use that to deny them if it's been over 3 years. Now, I know Chicago doesn't always work like this, and that's another system and another soapbox that I'll get off of. But generally speaking, you rob a 7-Eleven at gunpoint, you may be sitting in jail for 3 years. You don't even have a chance to not do another crime for 3 years. It's not that you've gotten better. It's not you've changed your ways. You've been sitting in jail for the last 3 years. So you didn't have a way to commit that crime, and yet you're still allowed to rent that apartment because Illinois is so worried about making sure that people aren't being discriminated against. So this tenant, when the sheriff came, was not home. So they came in and they opened the door. They put the sticker on the door. But there was 2 pit bulls in there, the pit bulls that we were talking about. So we actually have to wait for animal control to come out to clear the unit and to take full control of it. So that just leaves more and more people at risk, and more, it's just a crazy situation to have that has to be figured out. And this journey, again, normally 8 to 10 months. This eviction took, I think, almost 2 years. We had
Getting to the topic of the day. Is real estate investing worth it in 2026? How do you feel about that?
Real estate is for the long game. So I want to break this conversation down a few ways, and we'll talk on each one. So today, 2026, answer the question that you asked: is investing still worth it? So I think there's a couple things here. One is the interest rates are going down. So loans are getting less expensive, which is great. We're able to get a property at a decent rate, anywhere from 5 to 7.5%, depending on the loan, depending on your credit, depending on a lot of different things. That sounds terrible if you're a new investor. If you're an investor that has gotten into this game in the last 5 years, what I just said sounds horrible.
It's true.
We were spoiled. We were sold the lie. Millionaires are made during economic downtimes. 2020 was an economic downtime. 2021 was an economic downtime. And what happened is people started getting into real estate because other people started selling some things that they couldn't pay their mortgage on, et cetera. And interest rates went to an unbelievably low rate for a few years. This is not normal. This is not good. And I honestly hope that we don't ever have to go through that again. Like, if interest rates hit 2% again, it means that the world is dying again. 5 to 10% interest rates have been normal since the 80s, 90s, going through.
In the 80s, even above 10%.
Yeah, in the 80s,
13 to 15%.
13 to 15. If you go into the 70s, interest rates were 15, 17%. So, yeah, the interest rates, 5% to 6% is a good interest rate to get. Here's what people need to realize. Real estate is a long-term game. You're not necessarily supposed to cash flow right away or out of the box. Here's the secret, though. If you buy a property and you break even the first couple of years, your mortgage has 4 parts to it, right? You have the principal, the interest, the taxes, and the insurance. Taxes and insurance are always going to change. They're always going to go up. Principal and interest are always going to be the same for the life of your loan. And when you pay off your loan, they're going to go away completely, right? Every year you raise rent 5%, which means that if you cash flow 0 and you break even, the next year you should be cash flowing 5% because you just increased your rents 5%.
Right.
The next year after that, 10%, 15, 20, 30, you're going to keep going up if you keep up with everything. One thing to think about is, are you playing the long game? The game of buying a property and cash flowing right away is non-existent. It existed for a few years. We talk to people all the time that talk about, oh, well, I'm not cash flowing enough. I bought this property and it's just not cash flowing enough. It's like, well, are you not cash flowing enough, or are your expectations too high? Because out of the 5 ways that you make money with real estate, out of those 5, honestly, cash flow is going to be your lowest number if you have a mortgage. Now, here's the caveat to that, and the thing. People sit here and they watch YouTubers of millionaires saying that they're cash flowing $1,000 a month off of a house. They don't have a mortgage.
Exactly. It's easy to cash flow when you don't have any mortgage to pay.
And guess what? One of the things I love, Andrew Holmes, great guy to learn from. I love the way he talks about it, because his goal is you do a couple flips to get a down payment, then you use that money to buy the house, and you pay the house off within 7 years. If that's your strategy, in 7 years, and if you do the 1 or 2 of those a year, in 7 years, you're going to have a portfolio that pays for your lifestyle. You need to figure out what lifestyle you want, right? If you need an extra $500 to $1,000 a month, and that's going to help you, then just get a single family home or get a duplex or something like that is going to give you that when it's paid off, and you're going to be great. If you want, $300,000 a year, then yes, burrow your way to get to a point where you have enough doors to make that money, and then work your ass off to pay those off, so that way you can retire and have that money in real estate sitting there.
Right.
The other part of that is they didn't calculate what their are going to have to put into the property over the next 5 years.
Which is like your roof, your AC, HVAC, plumbing issues that come up, things of that nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Exactly. So that is something that needs to be taken into consideration. If you know you have to put a roof on in 2 years, you should start putting that money away so it's not a big surprise. And I think that will save the way that people consider money and consider their cash flow. So I think people, there are some cash flow that has happened because of the interest rates, and hopefully we're not there again. Hopefully we have to buy a property and start to pay down the mortgage for 4 or 5 years to be able to see that cash flow, because that's just the way the world should be. And that means that the economy is healthy, which means that you're going to have good paying tenants, you're going to have less issues. It means that you are going to have, you're most likely going to find a good deal on the real estate. You're going to be in long term, and a lot of different variables there. Generally speaking, real estate works out better this way than a flash in the pan. You buy a property and you're making money for a year or two because you found a great property. Step 2 is who should be in real estate investing. I think, again, another lie that we've been told for the last 3 or 4 years is you don't need any money down. You can find a creative deal. You don't need any money, and you can go and house hack your way through it. Now, I will say house hacking is a little bit different because I'm actually all for that. If you don't have you got to live somewhere, right? So might as well buy a 2-flat or 3-flat and house hack it. In that case, you just need the money to be able to be a homeowner, and I think everyone should have that if they're working. If you have enough money to start thinking about property and investing, you probably have a 9-to-5 that's paying you 50, 60 grand a year, which means you should be able to get your primary home and take care of it financially. The big lie, like I said, is all these YouTubers telling you you can find creative financing, you can find this, you can do that. That's great, and maybe that means you need less money. But I'll say this: real estate investing is the greatest wealth builder in America. Buying property is the best investment for wealth building. It is a terrible wealth creator. Meaning, if you don't have money to fix issues when they come up, if you don't have money for your property to sit vacant for 3 months because shit's going on, we had one of the slowest leasing seasons in our company history this winter. And it's not just us, it's tons of companies around that we talk to, because freezing temperatures, snow on the ground. So it was a terrible winter weather-wise. Then the economy sucks. People are out of jobs, are not working as much. And then on top of that, not only do we have real ice and snow, we have ICE parading around and going after people, making them anyone scared to put their social in anywhere, making anyone scared to give out information, to go even to view properties. This winter sucked for leasing.
Yeah, and if you don't have that money to put back into it or to take care of it when the tenant isn't paying rent, or if something happens, you have the pipes burst over the winter,
yep,
and insurance didn't cover it because you forgot to turn the gas on, in your empty unit, you never know.
Yeah.
You never know what you're gonna have to pay for.
And I think that's a huge thing, right? You don't know what you're gonna have to pay for, and you need to have that reserve, and you need to keep building that reserve. Going back to the previous topic, right? You need to have that reserve built so that when the big things come up, you're not falling flat on your ass. You have the money to pull out, pay for the roof, pay for the furnace, the water heater, whatever it is, and it's not a huge issue. So that part's big. I'm going to give you some tips if you're not there yet, right? Depending on where your level of extra income is, there's a few places you can start by. You can start by buying into REITs. You can start by finding other people's deals that you can put money into. I'll throw out my buddy over at 79th Street Lending. You can get into lending with 5 to 10 grand and throwing on a deal, maybe 20 grand, throwing on a deal and make interest and be on the lender side of an investor. So there's all these ways that you can make money where you're not going to run into the situation where you have to pull more money out of your pocket than what you invested. And I think those are ways to grow your income until you have enough. Another big one, like I said, is flipping properties. Finding a property to flip, go find a good deal, make some repairs, makes 20, 30 grand, put that aside, do another one. Now you got 60 grand as a down payment. You go buy a $200,000 house, $300,000 house, and start working to pay that off as quick as possible. You're going to be in a good spot. Who should be investing? If you can't pay for 3 to 6 months of your mortgage not being there. You may become rich, you maybe go broke. It's not a safe investment at that point. It is a gamble.
And that's on top of the money that you should have saved up for the house that you're living in as well for emergencies.
Yeah. I don't follow Dave Ramsey anymore because I think his investing advice is very novice. But in terms, the one thing I'll say is I followed him when I was younger and got out of debt really quick, and that lifestyle is much better to live. Now I'm not 100% opposed to using credit cards like him and all that stuff and blah, blah, blah. We can go through all that. But I think trying to be out of debt as much as possible is huge. And having that emergency fund is huge for both your house. And then you need a separate one now for your real estate. Because guess what? When times get bad, they get bad for everyone. So the odds of the economy sinking and you losing your job and your tenant losing your job, like COVID did, is higher than only one happening. So that's a good point. You want to make sure you have both because there's good odds that shit happens to both of you. The world, if something bad happens, it's going to happen to everyone.
Right.
So.
And if you're anything like me, when the storm comes, it always comes for me in both places, no matter what.
Yeah. Murphy's Law, if you're not prepared. I feel like when you have that emergency fund paid up and ready to go, like all of a sudden your car stops breaking down less and like things like the second you draw out of your emergency fund, your car breaks down. It's almost like being a landlord. The second you go on vacation is when something will break in your unit. A quick commercial, but why you need a management company and on vacation and not having someone to take care of your tenants while you're gone. Don't be caught at work, not having, being able to deal with the situation. Going back to the eviction that we talked about, right? We had to be there. We didn't know exactly what time. We had to be there from 8 to 12, and we didn't know until the day before the eviction that we had to be there. So if you're working a 9 to 5, it becomes very hard for you to be there for things like that because they don't work around your schedule. So professional management and being able to afford that and putting that into your budget is huge. Plus, if I have professional management, it means that I can scale as big as I need to because it doesn't take more time out of me. So I can get to 100 units, 200 units, whatever that is, and it takes the same amount of work on a daily basis as if I had one unit.
Absolutely, yeah, it makes perfect sense.
The last part of this, the Chicagoland area. The landscape in Chicago is very, very tenant friendly. If you are thinking, should I go to Chicago? Should I go to anywhere in Cook County? Or do I cross the border and go to Indiana where I can throw a tenant out in 2 months? It's a valuable thing to think about. Here's what I will tell you, and here's why I think Chicago is still a good place to invest if you're the right person. And the right person is what I described in the previous segment when we were talking about who should invest. People with money that can weather a storm. The pricing of the home has the risk baked into it. The rent amount that we charge has risk baked into it. No other market that I know of can you go and buy a home for $150,000 and rent it out for $3,000.
Right.
It doesn't. That market doesn't exist. If you go over to Indiana where you can throw a tenant out, which is great, you're going to spend $150,000 to buy a house, and you're lucky if it rents out for $1,200 or $1,500. The prices are already baked in for the risk. The homes you're buying for less money than if you go to California or go somewhere like that. I mean, you're to get a house, you're looking at $500,000, $600,000. Here, you can still buy houses for $150,000, $200,000. Rents are exponentially higher than what they should be for the areas that people are living in. When you go to the worst parts of Chicago, the rents are sometimes higher than some of the nicer suburbs.
Very true.
Which is crazy, and it's mind-blowing, but it's because of the risk. It's because these tenants they can't go live in those suburbs because they'll never get let in because their credit is terrible, because they have a criminal background, because all these things. They can't go to somewhere where rent is going to be cheaper and they're living in a better school district, et cetera. So they're stuck in this area for the most part, and they have to pay a lot of money. Now, that's a different soapbox we can get into another time of how can we make housing affordable and all that stuff. The quick answer is we need to build more housing and build it in areas lower income areas. Stop trying to make, we're building a lot. Chicago's built a lot in the loop in
Right.
areas where you have to, have a $300,000 job to live. That's great and all, but it's not helping the actual situation. It's
Yeah,
helping
not
other
at all.
Again, if you are trying to buy and no money down, and I'm not, the other thing about Chicago is all the houses are 100 years old, so there's going to be issues. So again, you need that reserve. But again, that's baked into the price. So if you're looking for newer property with better tenants, et cetera, go to Indiana, go to Ohio, but you're not going to get the returns that you get here. And that's where the risk and the reward equal each other. And that's why I think Chicago and Chicagoland is a great place to invest, and would love to chat more. One day, maybe we'll do something on it of which places in Chicago specific, which neighborhoods, what's the pluses and minuses of them. And maybe we'll do that here in an episode soon on that. So yeah, I think that is the answer to 2026 investing. I think that nothing has really changed. I think that, you have to look back at 2018, 2017, 16, when we were back in the real world pre-COVID, and compare to that. What do you think?
I completely agree. I think the biggest mistake that I see people make is to invest in the properties, because I spend my day literally talking to new landlords.
Mm-hmm.
And every single time that someone talks to me, the biggest issue is coming up with the money should things need to be done.
Yep.
Well, I can't afford to do that. I just bought the place and I put all my money into that. And it's like, well, you have to consider these things when you are purchasing the property. You have to have that money set aside. If you don't, you're just begging for trouble.
And one other thing, if you are an out-of-state investor, you brought up a good point. Because I think sometimes you talk to people that are out of state,
Mm-hmm.
and they go, I went on Zillow, I looked at a photo, the kitchen looked great, here's $100,000 because I'm in LA and a shack costs $300,000 here.
Right.
And this is a whole house for $100,000. And then they never look at it, they never see anything, because what could go wrong? They buy it, they come to us, hey, go here and rent it out. Okay, well, we need 30 or 40 grand to make it livable. Like, you're not like the world of buying a property for 50 grand and it being in good condition is not a real thing anymore.
No.
If you're out of town, one, get an inspection. Two, get a property manager that's going to be handling your property for you involved early, because realtors aren't going to like me again. Your realtor gets the commission as soon as you close. They don't care after that. Your property manager needs to deal with the property, needs to deal with you, and needs to deal with the tenants. So they are going to have a better eye during AI than your realtor. And they're going to make sure, because they're not getting paid on the sale, they can care less what happens on the sale. They care what happens the next 12 months with those tenants and with that building and what it's going to cost you, et cetera. You want to get them involved early during AI, during the closing process, to make sure you're not buying a lemon, and make sure you're getting your stuff taken care of well.
Absolutely. That's 100% what I recommend to everybody when I talk to them is when we get calls in for people that are in the process of closing,
Mm-hmm.
it's super important for them to get us involved. Even if they don't necessarily sign up with us right away,
Yep.
I still want to make sure that we go out and take a look at the property. Because like you said, it does us no good to sign a contract with someone to manage a property, and then we walk in and tell them they have to spend 50 grand and all is lost. They don't get it.
Do one more thing. So real quick before that, comment below any questions that you guys have. We're probably going to be in the next couple times we record, we're probably going to do a Q&A where we take these questions and deep dive and go into it. So ask those questions wherever you're watching this. Ask questions that you want to see us answer. Would love to answer them on the podcast for you. Want to go into this last segment. We are probably going to release this sometime in March, which means everyone is starting to think about taxes, starting to think about one of those 5 ways that you make money in real estate is saving on taxes. So want to go over, and here's my tip. Here's something you may not be thinking of. Are security deposits taxable income? What do you think?
No.
If you're holding a security deposit, it is not taxable income, because it technically is not your money. It's still the tenant's money.
Right.
However, the second that you charge the security deposit for damages, it becomes income. So you take it out, it is now income. You now have to pay taxes on that income. Here's the good news. If you aren't breaking the law, when you deduct that money from the security deposit, you are using that exact amount of money to make repairs. That repair is deductible, thus meaning that you're not going to pay for that on your taxes, because you're going to deduct the exact amount that you used, which is the legal way you have to do security deposits. If you charge $300 off someone's security deposit because someone punched a wall and you need to repair it, you need to spend that $300 to repair it. Same thing with during your lease. And now here's something else too. If you do, first of all, if you're in Chicago, don't do security deposits. But if you do, or if you're in one of the suburbs, that's a little bit easier to do, and you do. If you're in the middle of a lease, don't take money from the security deposit to fix something. Charge the tenant and get that money. You don't want your security deposit to be at zero and there's still to be 3 months left in their lease, right? You want that security deposit to be at the full balance it needs to be when they leave. So charge your tenant. Same rules apply when you charge your tenant for a repair. If you charge your tenant $100 for a repair, that money goes to you. That is now taxable income. However, if you pay the plumber $100, now you do not have to pay taxes on that income. So a good lesson, a good tip, and we're probably going to shoot some more of these tax tips as the season comes. So be on the lookout for that and how you can make sure you are making the most amount of money. Again, I think that for most investors, I'm going to say the next 2 months because of tax returns, but realistically, we all know that we can extend till October and put in an extension, etc. But the most money you make in real estate is by saving money on taxes. I think is if you have the right setup and the right things, you're gonna win out, and that's where real estate again builds wealth better than it creates wealth, because you have to have money coming in from somewhere that you need the tax deductions for, otherwise it's pointless. But it's great, and I think that's going to be awesome. So we're going to close it off again, guys. Subscribe, help us hit our goal of 500 subscribers. And subscribe to our channel.
Yep, and you can find us on social media, Chicago Style Management, everywhere that you look. And if there's ever anything we can do, please reach out. We're happy to help.